and welcome to episode 20 of HardcoreGaming101.net's Top 47,858 Games of All Time podcast, where we objectively, definitively, and scientifically rank the games you nominate. My name is Xerxes, and unless you don't have a neck, I fail to see the added convenience of bendy straws. My panelists today are...
I'm Bob Nader.
Carl.
Satanga here.
And I'm Jeff.
On this podcast, we have 3 rules. Die Taugwitze, all rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate. DR Taugwitze, you can nominate one game at a time via Twitter by hitting me up at GC9X. Die San Taugwitze, you can nominate games that have already been nominated, but please don't nominate games we've already ranked. And my apologies to our Chinese-speaking listeners. I tried my damnedest. You can see the master list for yourself. Check it out. bit.ly/47k games. And remember, if you want to guarantee that we'll rank your game within the next month or as soon as humanly possible, include that game in a 5-star iTunes review. We're going to be doing a bunch of them today. So thank you, guys.
Put them on Stitcher, too, by the way.
Our next game is Kwirk.
Not spelled with a Q like I originally thought.
And me you. Yeah, that's how I spelled it, and I supposedly love it.
I blame Ed Boon.
which was nominated by Punk Sucks on iTunes, which means we had no choice but to rank it immediately. It was developed by Atlas. It was published by Atlas in Japan, Nintendo in Europe, and Acclaim, those purveyors of quality, in the United States. The platform was Game Boy, and its earliest release date was November 24th, 1989 in Japan. So Kwirk is if you know what Sokoban is, it is kind of a Sokoban Plus. It is a block-pushing puzzle game that involves, it's kind of a cross between Sokoban and Adventures of Lolo, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
But
it's actually a pretty good comparison point. I hadn't thought of Lolo.
Well, Lolo has more action-type elements because there are bad guys in it and stuff like that. Yeah. Which, if they
Lolo
exist...
was Sunsoft, right?
No, it was
Hal
Laboratory. Makers of Kirby.
Okay. Jesus, I'm sorry.
I like it better than both of those games. So, but it is basically those things. Like
it's also a slight experience, let's call it.
It's a great Game Boy puzzle game because... basically, Game Boy puzzle games were either like reflex falling block type puzzle games, usually like Tetris or Dr. Mario or something. But then there are also like Sokoban clones. No, those are the two big things. And Sokoban doesn't have any kind of time element to it. It's just a puzzle screen, and you have to move things around in the right order so that you can get to your goal. The cool thing about Kwirk is, number one, it stars, I believe, a tomato.
In sunglasses.
As was required of every, tude-bearing hero.
Make a small detour real quick. I want to bring up something.
Go ahead.
Does anyone remember a cartoon called The Power Team? I think it was part of Video Power.
I remember hearing of it, but I don't think I've ever seen a single episode.
I was vaguely aware of this, yes.
I've never seen it, but if you ever want to watch a cartoon about sunglasses...
It was Acclaim published characters, right? So Kwirk was one of them.
Captain N with Acclaim, yeah.
Right.
Wow. What
another
property.
One of them. The other thing I remember of it was that one of them was like an arch rivals guy, but I might be wrong about
Tyrone, one of the basketball players, and Max Force, one of the officers from the incredibly gory digitized Eugene Jarvis game Narc. Very kid-friendly.
And the guy from Wizards and Warriors.
Oh, Kuros. So he's probably like the most relatively famous. Wizards and Warriors was apparently a bit of a fair deal back then, but what a motley crew, isn't it?
It's like the Avengers of crap. No, not really. Like, I like Wizards and Warriors is an okay game. Arch Rivals is, and Kwirk is a great game. I like it. It's a great puzzle game. It's especially good for the Game Boy platform. It's one of the early Game Boy games, I think, that, a third-party game that really capitalized on the format.
Again, going back to Jeremy Parrish, as we mentioned in the episode prior to this, that's like I think there was already a Sokoban game. In fact, I'm sure there was.
We got Boxel first, I believe.
Yeah.
Boxel has amazing cover art. Check it out.
Oh, yeah.
It does.
That dude is the happiest box pusher I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And this is coming from somebody who pushed boxes as one of my first jobs after college.
I don't know where he ranks against the shove it guy, but yeah, that dude is into what he's doing.
He's like a combination of like R. Crumbs, like Mr. Natural, and like a warehouse worker.
But
that's what I like about him.
Voxel itself is pretty much just plain Jane Sokoban, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is Sokoban.
It doesn't have.
It's a great comparison point where you can see a really bland, basic Sokoban, which personally I don't like. I'm sorry, I hate Sokoban clones. So
Voxel is one of those games where I think it's better than the Japanese game, even though they're identical, because we didn't get Sokoban really. So that was not necessarily our first exposure. I'm sure there were like PC versions of Sokoban that somebody got, but nobody remembers. But Voxel was like the first time we really got that sort of thing. So it was pretty cool at the time. Like in Voxel still holds up. It's in Sokoban holds up, but they're good games.
I do want to say, if you look at this point from Game Boy World, which you should totally watch, it's great. You'll see that there are like a ton and tons and tons of puzzle games in the early Game Boy's lifespan, and this is probably one of the best of them. I'll be honest.
It's pretty high up there. There's also like Flip Hole or something, and he really likes.
It couldn't be Tetris, certainly, but it's a good number. If you ever get tired of Tetris, this is a good number 2 puzzle.
There was a really good action puzzler, Raid, I think, is worth checking out.
The ladder
kicking game, yeah. But yeah, this is really like of pure like single screen Sokoban style games. It is a great iteration on Sokoban. It involves, Sokoban is strictly box pushing, right?
Right.
As far as I know, yeah.
It is just box pushing. And so you got to push boxes in the right order, and don't push a box into the corner where you can't, because you can't pull boxes. You can only push.
Basically, there are very few correct solutions, if not only one correct solution for a Sokoban puzzle.
And it's the same thing in Kwirk. Kwirk has like the tower kind of conceit that you get in Adventures of Lolo, where you're going like either further up or further down a tower. I don't know exactly which. I'm not sure it matters. You're trying to rescue some kind of vegetable queen, something.
I thought you were rescuing Mrs. Pac-Man.
I do think that maybe the toot on the front box is a little bit misleading, and I don't know if. I do like Kwirk quite a bit.
If you look at the artwork for the Japanese versions, they're like clay characters. It's one of those great. Puzzle Boy, I think, has like a little clay characters on it, and there's.
I definitely missed the clay character box art, which was hugely popular for like.
They did a lot of those. We mostly know them in North America from Nintendo Power covers. The early Nintendo Power covers had a lot of clay character art.
For me, it makes me think of Earthbound.
Yeah, and Earthbound too, of course.
Kwirk is do we mention that it's incredibly fiendish? It's.
Well, yeah,
I don't want to say that because I keep feeling like maybe I just suck at it more than other people do, but I found it very hard, and I still do.
It's a difficult little puzzle game.
The catch of these puzzle games is that they do get really sadistic in later levels.
I do want to describe the gameplay just real quick, so you haven't touched on much of that. It is similar to Sokoban in that your main method of interaction is pushing boxes, but there's a lot of things besides box. You have pits that you need to push things in to fill them.
Right.
You have like turnstiles that you can push through, but you can't. You can move through, but you can't
pull
push
them
things through.
Right. Like that's the main thing about Sokobans. You can't pull things.
And at some points, you even have multiple characters. You have to coordinate things to get to the exit.
That's when it gets really crazy and really.
The goal is to always get to the exit. You don't have to push things in the right spots.
Right. With Sokoban, you're trying to push a box onto the X, which means something.
Because you don't. There are we did say like Sokobans have one solution. I think a lot of the times Kwirk kind of has a little bit more flexibility. Generally the solution is one thing, but you can kind of fudge your way to it a bit easier than Sokoban, where it's like, if you didn't push that block in this exact spot 20 moves ago, you screwed up now.
But unlike Sokoban, it's very hard to just look at a puzzle and figure it out before you do it. Sokoban, you can, because there's only one kind of pushable thing, which are boxes. And so when you look at it, although most people would play through it and retry until they figure it out, that's the fastest way to figure out a puzzle. But theoretically, you can just look at it and very easily figure out, not easily, but you should be able to figure out like, oh, okay, so you push that there, that there, that there, and you can do it that way without having to restart. With Kwirk, it's much harder because there's a lot more variables at play. The turnstile things are the bane of my existence. They are incredibly difficult.
Even in the early levels, it took me like 10 freaking minutes to figure out how to operate them in this one level.
Which is what makes it such a great Game Boy game, I think.
It does give you a lot of content through its difficulty, I'll say.
It is.
Well, because the two modes are completely different, right? You've got like the complicated puzzle mode. You have like, what is it, like almost a random generated puzzle mode that's like timed? It's really odd. That's the going up is the normal puzzles, and going down sends you through like this gauntlet of micro puzzles that also are completely different to the normal game's puzzles. And they come in easy, normal, and hard, and you can choose to do several of them at once, which is really curious. Like, you can say, oh, I want to do 20 rooms in a row, and then you have all these, like, micro puzzles that you have to get through.
Right.
I don't know how many of them there actually are and how random they are, but this
is, I think, like, about the same time, what is this? It was 1989. This is kind of when Atlas is starting to become, like, a really incredible developer, I think, of these kinds of games. Not puzzle games, but I mean, like, they're really starting to, there's a lot of great stuff coming from Atlas starting about now.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if they were actually involved in the first Megami Tensei games for the Famicom. I don't know if they were, but if they were, those are friggin' good too. And have nothing
by Namco?
They were
published by Namco, but I think they were Atlas.
Probably.
I mean, Atlas was also doing a lot of contract work at this time.
Right.
They did like Friday the 13th and other stuff. And these games are generally pretty. And Jaws, I think, for the NES.
Yeah.
These games are pretty well remembered. I mean, they're kind of And I did. I'm going to forget it right now. As a matter of fact, I'm forgetting it. It's gone. It's gone. I don't know what you said.
Success.
Power.
So let's rank it. I don't even want you to finish your sentence. Your sentence is done.
But yeah. Anyway, it's the beginning of Atlas's prime. This is also like, I believe, what's the cat grappling hook game?
Link's the grappling hook cat. I'm pretty sure.
Don't give me the Japanese title. It's not what I'm asking. NY Yankees, I believe, was the Japanese title.
Rockin' Cats.
Rockin' Cats. Yeah.
I like that one.
Oh, I cannot believe I remember the Japanese title first.
Nerd.
You'll excuse me. I am going to die.
I think like, if you're looking for third-party, very early Game Boy games, like 1989 Game Boy games,
one of the best.
So it's worth considering when we rank it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm thinking, I mean, I guess just starting from like Super Mario Land in a way, because that's one of those games that we kind of ranked based on the place it held within the early Game Boy pantheon, so to speak. Because it was like, it's a pretty good, classic Mario game. But what really makes it good is that was on like a glorified calculator.
Well, Kwirk is kind of fortuitous in that because it's on such a limited system, it doesn't bother you with any extraneous cruff.
No.
Like you have, it's just a simple pared down, very, very like well put together in terms of just puzzles, like puzzle game. And that's,
And for as varied as the puzzles get, they don't really add that much new stuff to it. Like you kind of, after playing it for maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes, you're going to see almost everything the game could possibly throw at you. But
I'm pretty sure the first
so much worse. Yeah.
You can also actually say that about Super Mario Land.
Yes, yeah, that's true. It is a pretty short.
I would go ahead and suggest a ranking here between Descent and Advance Wars 2.
Yeah, you got to put it below Descent. Advance Wars 2 is a good comparison because it's another great game that's great for its platform.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking.
Final Fight is not a good comparison, which is right below Advance Wars 2. Final Fight's kind of like it will work on anything, but it's also kind of a one-trick pony, so to speak. So, yeah, I might
be going below Advanced Wars. Just because Kwirk is kind of, I don't want to break out too many other games here. But I don't think we mentioned Chip's Challenge, but that was also a portable game, and it kind of does a lot with the same formula, except presents a lot more stuff to
by putting it below Final Fight, above Monsterland. We're also putting it above Blue Stinger, Contra the Hardcore, Ranger X, Ikaruga, Bushido Blade, Full Throttle.
It's a mighty list.
Right. I mean, we should note that there's no question that our list is very top heavy, which by that I mean that the first 50% of the games on our list are actually all very good.
They're amazing.
Whereas the bottom 50% is kind of a grab bag between average and abysmal. It's not the same kind of spread.
No, if we had like 1,000 games on the list, it might be a little bit less crazy. But one thing I want to say, and this is in Kwirk's favor, and this is one of the reasons I actually really appreciate Kwirk. Firstly, it's really, really, really well designed for the Game Boy. It's like the system, it is perfectly suited for the Game Boy. They built it solidly. You know, that's why so many of these early games are puzzle games. Scream for the Game Boy was horrible, blurry, barely see anything. Anything moves, it goes off and you can't see it.
Right.
You know, Kwirk, you can play 100%, no problem. It has 2 buttons. It doesn't really need them, but one of the buttons locks your player so that every time you press the D-pad direction, you only move a single square. They thought about it and went, if you want precise movement, you got it. It gives you.
You don't want to mess up by accident. You want to mess up intentionally and find out that you messed up.
And if you do mess up by accident, they do actually remember your steps. I don't know how many steps it remembers, but if you go into the reset pause menu, there's a little thing down the bottom that says back.
I mean, I think we got to get real here. Like, I love Kwirk. It's one of my favorite Game Boy games. But I mean, I'm looking down on the list like Bat Rider, Street Fighter 3, Devil's Crush, Outrun, Snatcher. I'm putting it above Snatcher, below Outrun, actually. And that's not because I don't like Kwirk. It's because I like Kwirk, but I'm not going to like build it up into something.
I know Jeff shot it pretty high. I had been originally looking at somewhere around Armed Police Bat Rider, had been like somewhere in that general region.
I could put it like, personally, I like it better than Devil's Crush. I feel like Devil's Crush is a fantastic game, and I admire its crafts, but it was just as hard, if not harder, to create a game like Kwirk and make it work well. A puzzle game has to be fair and fun and have kind of staying power, like, you know, something you're going to want to keep picking up every time you have to, you know.
Well, what I like about Kwirk is that a lot of the other puzzle games, and this includes Tetris, on the Game Boy, especially at the time, were like, here's our mechanic. Okay, go try and play all the different puzzles with our mechanic.
Right.
It's like, we have like 7 or 8 mechanics, and we're going to mix them up, and then we're going to give you a second mode, which completely rechanges how the mechanics kind of work.
Right.
And that's really cool that they're like, they took
cool.
They crammed as much as they could.
And so you're suggesting directly beneath Outrun?
I'm actually suggesting directly beneath Street Fighter 3.
I guess your question is like, I mean, is it better than Devil Crush, but not as good as Street Fighter?
You know, honestly, I want to put it. That's a good point. I want to put it above Street Fighter 3 just because Street Fighter 3 is a refinement of existing good gameplay, whereas Kwirk is sort of that, but it's also kind of sort of its own. You know, I mean, because the genre didn't really continue much beyond that. Okay. We didn't even get the sequel, Puzzle Boy 2.
Wait, we did. It's called Amazing Tater over here.
Oh, you're right.
It's called Amazing
It's just really super
Tater.
rare.
That's a great name, isn't it?
I've never played it. Yeah, I've never played it. It's very hard to find.
Yeah, it pretty much just looks like more of the same. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it might have a couple things. No.
That just says that Kwirk really knocked it out of the park in its first shot.
Kwirk works.
Okay, so what about above UN Squadron or above Sin and Punishment, something like that?
I don't think it's above Sin and Punishment.
Yeah.
Really, like at this point.
You guys have successfully talked me down from my initial position, but yeah, between Sin and Punishment and UN Squadron.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, me too.
I'm not going to argue.
It's done.
I'm not going to argue. Let's go.
It doesn't matter if you do, because it's done. So yeah, that's a good place for Kwirk. Interesting.
I agree. My name's Jeff, by the way. Hi.
Jeff lives in a van, but he doesn't have to if you donate to patreon.com/HG101 Jeff Fund, which is not a part of the URL, but just think of it like that. Keep going.
That's all right. Let's just, I'm going to throw the ball, and he threw the ball back, and now I'm going to throw it right back to Xerxes. All right.
I also have something to say about this topic.
Great. Tell me more about the topic that we are discussing. I believe it has to do.
It was Kwirk, but now it's time to work. And what I mean is time to pay the bills. And what I mean by that is please donate to patreon.com/HG101. It's a great idea. It helps support the site, helps us pay our many hardworking authors from around the globe who are always happy and willing to write as much as they possibly can about who knows what. It could be garbage. It could be about the N-Gage. Who knows? Game.com. But they're out there doing it, and we got to pay them. And I think that's important because if we're not going to pay them, nobody's going to do it. Donate. Patreon.com/HG101. Feel good about yourself. And also, we're getting close to the holiday season. Don't be a chump buying gifts for your friends and family and loved ones. Kick some money in the direction of some perfect strangers like me, like Jeff, like Blueberry Butts or whatever it is who wrote that Eternal Champions mega article.
Think about it this way. The people you buy gifts for this holiday season may not get you a damn thing. If you send us money, I guarantee Hardcore Gaming 101 is going to produce something with it.
That's right. That is right.
Money in the bank, people.
Our next game is Last Battle, also known as the Genesis Hokuto no Ken game, the Genesis Fist of the North Star.
Well, that would be the Mega Drive one, wouldn't it, then?
The Genesis Mega Drive, yeah. So it was nominated by John Moran, 9 on iTunes, who I have a suspicion might be Jacko Moran on Twitter. But I can't prove it. But I'm pretty sure that's true.
Yeah.
It was developed by. Yes, thank you for the 5-star review on iTunes. By the way, if you're going to be that asshat who writes a 4.5-star review and nominates a game, we're not going to humor you. It will not be discussed. In fact, it might be blackballed from the list forever. It's developed, I think, by Sega, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, best as I can tell, it was internal.
Well, they did everything for the early Mega Drive stuff. It was published by Sega for the Mega Drive / Genesis. Its earliest release date was July 1st, 1989 in Japan. And as I said, its Japanese title was Hokuto no Ken Shinseki Ura Kyusei Aruji Densetsu.
Better known as Fist of the North Star.
Better known as Fist of the North Star.
New World something.
Now, to say something about this real quick, this came out in the U.S. as they did this a lot. There were at least 2 Fist of the North Star games. They'd already done it
with the Master System version of Fist of the North Star, which they just called, I think, Black Belt, right?
But it's even lazier this time because I think they kind of changed the names. They just kind of gave up after that.
It's all crazy because the Fist of the North Star was released on the NES in North America as Fist of the North Star because somebody had the crazy idea that Fist of the North Star was going to take off in Japan. It had, and that was, I believe, completely uncensored. It involves all the head exploding that the Famicom version was. But
oddly enough, I believe that this game is censored, even though
it is
Sega was supposed to be
super duper censored. Yeah,
not only is it censored, but half the cast is now green-skinned aliens for no adequately explored reason.
Yep. Yeah, it is. If you don't know about Fist of the North Star. I just want to say how lucky you are and that you might want to stop listening now.
Jesus.
Wait until next week. No, I mean, Fist of the North Star is one of those weird late or mid-'80s manga anime things. I think started out kind of tongue-in-cheek and then became deadly serious.
Yeah,
and it's kind really of like a... Yeah, Mad Max meets Bruce Lee type apocalyptic future. It involves a guy who's a master of some kind of fake martial art that when you hit people, it's like the 5-point exploding palm death trick or whatever it is from Kill Bill, except it literally explodes your enemy, usually their cranium. The cool thing is that I guess when you look at the manga or the very faithful, at least visually, cartoon, when he hits people with his technique, their head starts like bulging. and you see like the veins pop out for a second, and then it just bursts like a balloon full of tomato soup. And
sadly, in the American
doesn't
version,
happen in this game. Yeah,
in the American version, just like kick them into space like Popeye.
So for the NES game, they could get away with it because they just kind of like exploded into pixel chunks. And that was kind of it. It wasn't any more graphic than what happens when you destroy like a Metroid or something in Metroid. Mm-hmm. In this game, although it does have like the kind of like bulbous like head pulsating head thing that it does do, I believe. So maybe a little bit more graphic. But with this one, what happens when you punch or kick an enemy is they just fly off the screen. It
needs a sound effect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically like Kung Fu or Spartan X or something like that.
It's like just kind of a belt scrolly fighter thing.
A literal belt scroller where you cannot move in anything other than forward or back, and they're just enemies that come charging at you. So, Tinga, I wonder whether you agree with me on this. Like, possibly the best game in this weird subgenre of like violence games or something. I don't know what you want to call them. Like perpetual violence games is probably, if you don't count the Retro Game Challenge DS game, whatever that was called.
The Mu Tekken Kung Fu.
Yeah, that one was the best one. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, definitely.
But if you count like original games like from the old days, I would say the best one is, I just lost it. I was thinking about it and I lost it.
Oh man, dude, you're leaving me hanging. I do like this.
No, I'm sorry. No, I lost it again.
No, darn it.
It was it's around the tip of my tongue. It's not Kung Fu. It's not Altered Beast for sure.
Let's see. Let's see if I can help you piece it together. Well, it's not Splatterhouse, even if that's a personal favorite of mine.
That's a pretty close one, but it's not Splatterhouse. It's.
Can you at least describe?
No, I can't. It's gone.
Damn it! All right. Well, this is going to bug the hell out of me.
It was replaced by like an infomercial. It's like it's just part of my brain has been overwritten.
I do want to say one thing about this game I appreciate. I've been thinking about this for a little while, so I kind of feel like this game sort of has like a power fantasy thing going on. Like when you're in regular stages, enemies can barely like do a notch in your life bar. You just feel super tough, and you're just like kicking people into space all the time, and you feel really strong. And it's only really the bosses that can actually like really threaten you, and I think that's interesting.
The first boss you fight is a pushover. The second boss you can fight is like some weird like Cronenberg style like enemy, like a weird like Jabba the Hutt human-esque thing.
The first boss you fight is mutant Hulk Hogan.
Yes. Okay, so the game, so Tenga, this is why I was going to mention this. The game that I would say, like, if you really want to play a game that is basically exactly like this, except good, try the NES version of Capcom's Trojan.
Oh yeah, I really like Trojan.
Which is not a bad game. It's not a great game, but it's doing something.
It's very competent, and it has these little secrets here and there to get into that power you up, and it flows well. It's a short, nice after-dinner mint of a game to play.
Yeah, also the first of Capcom's NES coin-op conversions that actually adds something that adds depth to the gameplay.
Yeah, definitely.
It would have been... I mean, it is the first. It might not have been the first if they actually put out... Well, no. Did it predate Pirate Higemaru?
Oh, darn it. That I don't remember.
It might. It was
around the same time of Commando, which was also not a bad NES port, in my opinion.
Commando added a little bit, but it didn't add a lot.
Not substantial.
Trojan is basically a different game from the coin-op.
I was actually going to give my own recommendation for a Kung Fu type game, Ninja Warriors on the SNES, or Ninja Warriors Again, as it's known as in Japan. That one is primo.
Or if you can play it, if you're willing to steal it or import it, Spartan X2 is pretty good.
Yeah, but like these games kind of operate on a very butt rock kind of hair metal power fantasy wavelength. Like they're not sophisticated, they are not complex, but you get to punch things sometimes real good, and sometimes they explode, or sometimes they fly off the screen. The comparison point that I keep coming back to for this one specifically, because it's an early Sega Genesis game, is Altered Beast. And I think it is better than the Genesis port of Altered Beast, but it is well below the arcade version of Altered Beast.
They are very similar.
It doesn't have like the memorability of Altered Beast. Like Altered Beast, like Even the Genesis port has.
But when you punch people in Altered Beast on the Genesis, they just kind of turn into a couple sprites. Whereas when you're punching them in the arcade version, they're just like fucking exploding at you.
Right.
Like, and it's not particularly gory, but they're exploding at you in 3 dimensions, and it is great.
Cool.
I mean, I do think that there's kind of no real, like, I mean, Altered Beast doesn't exactly have, I would say, strong gameplay, but at least the function of kind of going from the Blando Man to a cool fantasy animal and then getting like laser breath powers or
Speedo Man. It comes in between.
Yes, I mean, if that's your fantasy to be Speedo Man, that's you've got that intermissionary period.
Different strokes.
One of these kids really likes the Speedo Man.
But you also have the cool wolf transformation or whatever, where he's like, "Rawr," and then he becomes a wolf. Also. Whereas in Lost Battle, you're just kind of like, my shirt explodes, and now I can just punch a lot. And if anything, it's more confusing because you're now like kind of like weirdly stuck in place while he flails his arms around. Whereas at least in Altered Beast, you kind of like, I can now kick all over the room with my magical wolf legs. Like that's, I mean, to me that's more fun.
With Altered Beast has like it's just more weirdness and more homoeroticism and more like just like. The kind of stuff that just is something special you just don't see in games anymore. I'm not saying that was like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. I really mean that. Like that was deliberate in those games. And if you don't think it was, something is wrong with you. That's what they were doing.
Something in it. Like it was the pack-in game for the Genesis for like why
that was what it was. I mean, they were not. Like, I don't know what else to say about it.
But they're going with like this ancient Greece or whatever aesthetic.
Very
just like.
Well, let's say this. It was very deliberately campy, whereas with Last Battle, not so much. I mean, it was just a new title and a couple edits to a game. Wasn't that great?
Yeah, Last Battle suffers from the fact that it's like it doesn't even have a context from being like a tie-in. It's just like, what is this? This is it's completely nonsensical. Did we actually mention the length of the intro? Because this is the most preposterous.
Oh, yeah.
Like, welcome to Star Wars times a billion, kind of like scrolling text.
It is a time of...
I want to say real quick.
Yeah.
I love this game's translation because it's so stupid.
Yeah, God.
Kenshiro has become Arzak? What sort of shitty name is that?
With 2 A's, yeah.
Like, you encounter this woman in the first level, she's like, Arzak, save the world! I must be the one to save the world!
I wish that is, I guess, every level to get those texts, because they're the best part.
That is true. It does have its own campy kind of value to it. I probably spoke too soon on that.
But,
and then you find this guy's like trapped in a concrete block, and R's like, I want you to help me.
He's like,
I hate that concrete block level. That's,
block guy.
This is where this game starts to, I think, especially to fall apart, is it's like, let's get a little fancy and present, like, areas that you have to go left and right and fall through holes and spears, and it's all garbage.
It is very much like in the Kung Fu mold, too, because it has the weird, like, trap levels where it's just like a bunch of, like, it is literally a house of flying daggers.
Yeah, I appreciate to an extent that it's trying to do more than just go left to right, but these confusing I'm afraid to say that word because Xerxes is going to bash me for it, but...
Linear?
That one, thank you. I refuse to say it now. I don't know. The mazy-ish type levels, though, are only secondary to... the ultimate problem that none of us has discussed about this game. You only get one goddamn chance. No passwords.
Insanely difficult.
And it is. Oh my god, I couldn't even beat the first freaking chapter.
Bob mentioned that it's feels like a power fantasy, but by the time you get like 15 to 20 minutes into this game, you just instantly die, and you're just like, huh? Yeah. Like, what happened to my ripped man body? I've just been completely trounced.
Like, and then it's only really good bosses I know to actually do any real damage to you.
Right.
Yeah,
it's really hard to die in any other stage other than a boss.
It's kind of like China Warrior, another really bad Kung Fu-like for the time.
Man, you make that comparison, and now I do not feel very good about this game at all.
Okay, so
this is has a little more value than China Warrior, but there are far better of this mold. Like
the other good thing about this game is it has some pretty sick early Mega Drive tunes.
Yeah,
the music's not bad. I'll give it that.
I mean, if you're looking at this purely from like stylistically, it's like this is pretty good. Like I like screenshots, I like scrolling the parallax bits, I like the music, the graphics are nice.
I really hate how your kicks have no more range than your punches.
Well, the way the kicks work right is they break. There's like two projectiles. And one of them you punch, and the other you kick. And I think that's
there's like a waist level projectile and a crotch level projectile. And for some reason, ducking and punching hits the waist level, but it will not scratch the crotch level. The crotch level projectile must be kicked.
Wow, that's something the game really should have probably bothered to explain.
It's not really called like Boot of the North Star. You know?
Codpiece of the North Star would solve a lot of problems in this game.
I think it would.
Throw all the daggers you want at this thing.
You can punch axes out of the air.
Unless someone has something else to say, can we just... Can we put this somewhere? Because this game bothers me a lot.
I think that this game, tried to do what you'd expect from a first-year Genesis title, but it falls on its face in several points. To say
I want to wrap this up by saying one more thing.
Go ahead.
Why was it so difficult for people to make a decent Fist of the North Star game?
Word.
You could have just made a beat 'em up with head explosions. Cut, print, done.
I will say the Sega Master System one was actually pretty good, in my opinion. Like, nothing too special, but it was definitely the best of its time. The one that became a black belt over.
The weird thing is they kept on doing Fist of the North Star games, and as Bob Mayer said, they were still doing the same like Kung Fu clone, like in 1989. What is wrong with you? Like,
yeah, the only other
make a Golden Axe. If you just add exploding skulls to Golden Axe, it is a Fist of the North Star game. Like
I wish they just added exploding skulls to Golden Axe.
Definitely.
We're going to be ranking that one eventually.
They did have skeletons. The only other Hokuto no Ken game of note I can think of is the fighting game made by Arc System Works, and like
people like that. That's like the only really actually possibly good Fist of the North Star game I can think
I don't know.
of.
It's an art game from them. Like the art would probably be real good if nothing else.
Yeah, definitely. I found it a little bit of a mess to play, but it's not bad.
Where are we going to put this one? Because it's not.
I got a range for you. Here, let me throw this out. Somewhere between Revolution X and Road Rash.
Well, it's worse than both of those games.
I honestly think it's worse than Firehawk.
It's worse than Technocop. It's worse than eSWAT.
It's not really.
It's worse than Road Rash. I don't know. I mean, is it worse than Ribbon? I think
I would put it like between Mega Man 02 and the New Zealand story.
Yeah, me too. Actually, that's about right. Like, it's not as good as Mega Man 02, which is not saying a lot.
Yeah. So you know what? Below the New Zealand story.
Yeah, that's true. New Zealand story has a cute bird in it.
Yeah, it's also a frustrating game, but I was able to get farther in it, so...
I have no mouth and I must scream. Like, I will say that Last Battle doesn't make me want to kill myself, so that is a plus. Whereas I have no mouth and I must scream.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's a feature, though, for I have no mouth.
I guess the failures of this really stupid game don't bother me as much as you guys, but I'm also not offended at all by you lowering it down.
How like what value does it have? That's the problem. Is it just not like there are even in that era of Genesis games or Mega Drive games?
I think this one kind of falls into the mediocre pit and maybe a little farther down because of how hard it is and how little chance it gives you.
If Altered Beast is the need to play this game, that is a huge criticism because Altered Beast is not great.
It's a great example of games for its time that really don't hold up very well.
Right.
Nowadays,
I mean, you should play Altered Beast. It's a lot.
Shorter at this point, you can play Altered Beast, the arcade.
But this game doesn't even have like the exploding bloody head chunks. Like it robs you of even that satisfaction. What is the point? Like, yeah, seriously, like it is.
I mean, it even adds like confusing garbage stuff where you could because you can move around the world map kind of freely along paths. It's just like, what? Why even bother?
Actually, seriously though, I Have No Mouth. Underneath that is like King's Quest V, Friday the 13th for C64, which actually does something interesting with its garbage.
As I said, I already said like I don't think it's better than Firehawk. I
don't either actually.
As
I would put it maybe below. I mean, I think its real competition is Eight Eyes, and
we honestly just keep lowballing Last Battle up. For
Last Battle is like a bad version of an already not good game.
It does nothing
I will forever rather play Last Battle over Yoshi. So that's like the bottom for me is right below Friday.
Eight Eyes, though. Eight Eyes. Would you rather play Eight Eyes than Last Battle? I kind of would.
I'd rather play Last Battle.
I mean, Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball, just the name alone.
Wait, hang on.
Name alone.
I think
you are getting ahead of yourself. I think on that one. Like I think
we were going by name. This list would be in reverse, and Bill Lambier would be at the top.
I'm just saying that Bill Lambier's only redeeming quality is the craziness of its name.
Yeah, the license.
Hey, wait, Last Battle has a crazy translation, and that's worth that. That's got to be
Last
something.
Battle is. I mean, Arzak, great. Arzak and Bill Lambier would probably throw down in an epic battle of craptitude.
Okay, Arzak is a Dogsbauer-esque character. Boom, headshot.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
I think you offended Xerxes with that one, Joe.
No.
Okay, hang on. Let me just plop it down.
Arzak would be flat on his ass after the first bong rip.
We really kept downvoting Last Battle, but I'm going to say definitively between Friday the 13th and Yoshi, maybe. Because
I agree, just because I don't want to talk about Last Battle ever again.
Yeah, Friday the 13th is at least fairly original in its premise.
It is original. It is a game that has value. It does something new.
Exactly.
You play the Commodore 64 Friday the 13th. You've seen something new under the sun. You play Last Battle. You've just seen like a bigger sprite version of NES basically. Congratulations.
And it's kind of worse. Like Yoshi is Yoshi's very similar in a lot of ways.
Play Trojan. That's all there is to it. Play Trojan. Our next game is Desert Strike: Return to the Gulf, which was nominated by @SB057 on Twitter. And he nominated the Game Gear game in particular. And we're going to have to deal with this because it's a little bit, it's not that different, but it is kind of worse than the other versions of the game. This version was developed by Tiertex. It was published by No, it wasn't. It was published by Domark. For the Game Gear. It's right on the box. Domark.
And we should talk about Tiertex real quick. They should basically be treated like an hourglass symbol or red and black. It's basically a danger sign. Don't mess with them.
Yeah, they're kind of like the Micronics of Game Gear, maybe.
Yeah, the Micronics of the UK, I think you could say. I'm pretty sure
that could be so many different companies.
True, but yeah, they're
not to diss the UK game development because they had like an incredible bedroom coding scene for their microcomputers, but Tiertex is not. I don't think they qualify.
Desert Strike's a helicopter game.
So I don't remember which episode of GCI Next
45.
It was. Our 45. So it was a very recent, within a year.
Yeah, one of our last ones before we switched to the current format we're doing.
One of our last. It was our fifth to last. And so check that one out if you really want to hear us talk about Desert Strike, because we do talk about it for like 2.5 hours.
I think I wanted that one, but you guys agree it was a pretty good game, right?
Yeah, everybody likes this game.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really hard. The controls are difficult to master, but it is good.
We can't say the same for this port. It's
this version
just
of the
straight
game,
up awful.
right. It was first released in 1994 in the US and or UK. Doesn't really matter because it's bad. The port is, so if you really want to hear us talk about Desert Strike, go listen to GC9X45. We talk about it more than any human being ever should. Not because it's a bad game, but just because there's not really, we probably say more than enough about it. But we give it its due. What is the issue with this version of the game, and why is it not?
Well, okay. The first and biggest elephant, I think, is the fact that the Game Gear has 2 buttons, literally 2 buttons, and you were already pushing the button count on 3 buttons with the Genesis and Mega Drive. Or
buttons are up and select. Is that correct?
But basically, your whole game experience is condensed down to 2 buttons from the minimum of kind of previously 3, and it really makes it hard to kind of fiddle with what you have to do.
You have to tap or hold to do everything.
Yep.
One button's guns and missiles, and one's strafe and hydras, and you don't want to waste your hydras.
The main problem I had with it is the field of view on the Game Gear is about as wide as your helicopter.
Yeah,
it's not quite that. It's insane. You can see maybe about 10 foot in front of you.
Yeah. In some ways, it feels like they took the graphics kind of from the other versions and were just all right.
Yeah, they should have downscaled those sprites. The helicopter should be smaller.
Yeah.
The enemy should be
what they really wanted to do is clearly, and you can see it all over this game, they wanted to look really nice in the box art. Is the you wanted to look at the back and go, wow, this looks just like the Mega Drive or SNES or whatever game. But yeah, it does look very, very close to it until you realize that, you can't see anything.
And that's the sad thing is that's really, granted they have fewer buttons to work with, but still, if you downscale the sprites and just made it, fit on the screen properly, it would be about the same. It wouldn't be that much worse. It wouldn't be that big of a downgrade.
Well, what's happened with this one is basically it is controls are junkier, vision's junkier. Everything is, it's everything's let's make it a little worse in lots of key areas, and that doesn't usually bode well for a game.
This is a Game Gear port that's in a lot of ways is the old the way they used to port Nintendo games, NES games to DOS, where they wouldn't even try to make sure that they worked properly. They were just kind of oh, this is how it works over there. It's maybe it's not exactly the same. Maybe you should test it out and see whether it works.
I actually wanted to bring up one more problem offhand, looking at them side by side, but the Game Boy Desert Strike scrolls much smoother than the Game Gear one. The Game Gear one is really choppy in comparison, when Nintendo's ported version really runs a lot smoother, more or less twice the speed, and the scrolling's a lot better. And even the field of view's a little improved, but no, the Game Gear one is just really choppy and sluggish in comparison.
Do you know what else really bugs me? Your map and your statistics are on different screens, unlike the other versions, or at least the console versions. So you constantly have to keep hitting start to scroll through everything.
Oh, Lord.
And you have to do that because you can't see the important stuff otherwise.
No.
Yeah, since the vision is reduced, you have to use the map even more to kind of locate where the hell you're supposed to be, which constantly means you're in the map screen, you have to constantly cycle the map screen, and every little thing is a bother.
Also, there is no sound effect for when you get hit, so you have to check your armor constantly.
Wow. Can you actually recover your armor properly as well?
That's right.
I tried to check my recover my armor, and I couldn't even, I picked up some people, and it doesn't seem to help very much.
I think it does give you armor. It should give you 100 points each.
Just not very much. The game does
Thank you for
warn
saving
you.
me. I got you some heavy helicopter armor.
I think that the game does, to its credit, when you get low on armor, it starts wailing at you blah, 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 every second.
It might be too late.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just say this for reference.
You can't even dodge bullets.
Yeah, not really well. The strafing, the controls a mess. The graphics are a real downgrade, of course.
The original game is hard enough. It is not an easy game.
Yeah, let me just say this for reference. There are, I'm counting Wikipedia, 11 different versions of Desert Strike. Why would you go with this one? Why eat hamburger when you can have steak?
Might be the worst. And it's not even like a steak. It's not filet mignon. This is a Salisbury steak here. Like, I like this game, but it's not.
Like the only thing maybe making this one better, I think maybe the Amiga one only has one button. That might be like a really big pain in the ass, but I don't know if that would ultimately, completely ruin the experience or not.
It's really sad because an Amiga would have a whole keyboard to work with, right?
Yeah, and they often don't use it. It's this whole thing. Don't even
really frustrating. Yeah,
don't question Europeans in the early '90s on the computers.
That's like
just don't.
This was nominated for probably one of two reasons, and I wonder which, but it was either person wanted to inflict some sort of psychological harm on us, in which case, congrats, or this is what they had when they were growing up. Like, this is Desert Strike to the nice friend of ours, SB057, who nominated this. And if this is a version that you had growing up, that's like, you ought to consider firing your parents. Like,
it's not too late. Yeah. Although, because you're probably like in your mid-20s, maybe don't, because you will need their couch.
Yeah, you have no idea.
Yeah, it's
it
happens.
But
I'm not joking. That's not. I'm speaking from experience.
Not go there. You're not wrong.
Experience.
No,
if we're looking at just even if it is the worst one, arguably, it's still you can still get some fun out of it. You can get used to most of the things that it presents as issues. It's just it's going to be the worst Desert Strike experience. It's still not it's not the worst Game Gear game. Not even close to the worst Game Gear game. It's still I can see where you're going with Desert Strike, and it's kind of fun because it's still Desert Strike, but it's still.
It's the opposite of Kwirk. It's a game that's not suited to its platform at all.
Which is interesting because I will mention this because obviously I'm a huge fan of the Lynx, and Desert Strike got a Lynx port, which turns out to alleviate most of the problems we've had because they didn't try and make it look nice. They pulled the vision out a little bit. It kind of looks, all the dirt is just dirt colored. It looks kind of crappy, but it's smooth and you got more buttons. So kind of it's really awkward with this version.
It's also ambidextrous.
I wouldn't have chosen to play this version of Desert Strike, but I guess if you had a Game Gear and you had a exactly 5-hour car ride and enough batteries to last you, it wouldn't be the worst game to have on the Game Gear. So,
relatedly, I don't know if any of us would have ever touched this version had it not been nominated. There's no reason to go back to it. So, for that alone, it's kind of cool. So, genuine thanks for nominating it, I guess.
Well, better thanks than Super Monkey Daiboken, which we covered the last episode. Well, that was a real humdinger.
Thanks, guys. Hey, I have an idea. What if we ranked it?
Are we putting it below?
Maybe we should. Maybe we're going in the wrong direction with this podcast. Maybe we should stop ranking games.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys later then.
All right. Night. Okay. So I'm thinking that we could put it below. I don't know. I'd put it pretty low. I mean, it takes a game that's already way too hard and makes it arbitrarily harder for no reason other than that they didn't think about what they were doing.
We can all agree that if you did the Genesis version, it would do okay in the ranking, right?
It would. The Genesis version would do fine. I want to say this again because I just said this just before, but it's not as good as Firehawk.
No, it's not actually. No, Firehawk does do better what this bad port does, but
I'm putting it below Jones in the Fast Lane.
I was eyeing that exact spot between Jones in the Fast Lane and Amagon.
Because Jones in the Fast Lane it's not bad because of its format. It's bad because it makes you hate life and yourself.
Jones is too real. That's always been its problem.
It's not like if you shrunk Jones down to the size of 2 postage stamps, it would be just as bad or good or whatever. It'd be the same game. Whereas I would say below Jones in the Fast Lane, Amagon just sucks no matter what. You can't. There's no saving Amagon.
This is still you could still eke out more fun of Desert Strike Game Gear, especially if you have a battery charger or something.
Wait, Cal, would you say you can eke out more fun than eke? the cat?
I wouldn't say
Come
that,
on,
but
you don't
yes.
have to get catty about this.
Wah, wah, wah.
Just
Too late to
Were you saying
hang
something,
myself?
Xerxes?
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot.
I think he was going to
just-
get your opinion because you haven't gotten to say your final piece. As a
I
strike.
was gonna say like below 8 eyes, but I can bring it down lower. I certainly don't mind.
Well,
Too nice,
game
man.
then,
Too
you know.
nice. Look, just because Desert Strikes Game Gear port is based on a very good game doesn't mean you have to be nice to this specific version. So
That's true. In fact, if anything, you should be meaner to it because
yeah, I
you
mean,
could
The
always
thing is,
play the
I'm
original
sure
game
the
and
Game
think,
Gear
oh,
could have
this
done a lot
Yeah,
better,
this
in the grand scheme of things.
Just make the sprite smaller.
Yeah,
it's not hard.
This isn't like Final Fight where, we just went with the SNES version because that was really the only one we thought was available, barring the Sega CD one. I mean, that's not a great port, but this...
Well, we didn't go with the SNES version on Final Fight. We went with the arcade version.
Yeah, exactly.
That's correct.
And here we're going with a version that was not the original, which I'm pretty sure is the Genesis version. So,
But it's so much worse than the original
If
and
you
so
have to
different
do
that
the
we
Game
have to
Gear,
rank it
and the
separately.
Game Gear version is below Jones in the Fast Lane.
That's all for this episode of Hardcore Gaming 101's Top Games Podcast. Special thanks goes out to John Morin9 on iTunes, Punk Sucks on iTunes, and at SB057 on Twitter for nominating those games. And thanks as well to those of you we haven't gotten to yet, although I think we're knocking quite a few of you off the list. Just knocking them right off. So that's good. But we're going to try to get to everybody as soon as we possibly can. Thanks as well to my lovely co-hosts and compatriots, our editor, Jeff Rude, our theme song composer, Muteki, and of course, the support and feedback of listeners like you. You can support this podcast by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HG101. I know I did because it's the right thing to do. You can also help us out by subscribing to our YouTube channel and by following HG_101 and GC9X on Twitter. But most importantly, help us claw our way into the podcasting firmament by getting on iTunes, subscribing to HG101, and giving us a 5-star review. Do it, or we'll outsource our podcast to Tier Tax. Until next week, keep keeping it real.